Today, the Air Force Installation and Mission Support Center will launch the iMentor program, designed to promote resilient, agile combat support airmen, capable of adapting to evolving Air Force requirements throughout their careers. To better understand the importance of having a mentor, Major General Bradley Spacy, Commander, Air Force Installation and Mission Support Center, Mr. Terry Edwards, the Executive Director, and the Command Chief, Chief Master Sergeant Jose LugoSantiago, will share some of their personal stories about mentoring. First, let me say thank you for taking the time to speak with us today. I would like each of you to think about the most influential mentors in your career. Where and how did you meet them? What was it about their approach that made them an effective mentor to you?
Yeah, well, I'll start off. For me, it's easy. It was my father. He's a colonel in the Air Force, retired now. You know, obviously I've known him my whole life. But, you know, it was interesting. I didn't even know I was being mentored as a young kid. I never intended to come in the military. But my father told my brother and I stories our whole life. And there were stories about, you know, war stories about work and life and things like that. And I thought it's just what fathers did. And it wasn't until much later in life I decided to come in the military. And all those stories began to mean something. And I thought about them in different leadership situations. Wait a minute, I know my dad told me a story about this. And it was really funny as I went through my career. I talk to him all the time. I still talk to him every single day unless it's just not possible because I'm traveling somewhere. And I hear a lot of those stories many times. But I get different lessons from them each time. And throughout my career, they've evolved like that, and I always felt like I had a big advantage in that way, because my fellow young officers and NCOs and even civilians, they have to learn this the first time from scratch, and I feel like, man, I've already seen the book. I mean, the people change and the times change a little bit, but the lessons were there all the time. And to me, that defines what a mentor is in many ways. So it was really, for me, a lifelong relationship that evolved over time. And it covered everything in life, you know, from life, family, health, you know, my whole well-being, including, you know, career progression. So for me, it was my dad.
For me, you know, I remember I was at a graduation, a community college of the Air Force graduation, and I was sitting in there. They introduced the guest speaker, and the name was not familiar to me at that time. And so I decided to listen. And as I was listening to the speaker, the person had me at the edge of my seat, and I was inspired. His name is Chief Vasquez. He's retired now. So what I decided to do was to go and meet him and just to thank him for the opportunity to be there for his message. So I go and I'm going to meet him, and there's this huge line of people, you know, just in front of me trying to say thank you and, you know, and talking with him about his message. And so it was my turn, and I had the opportunity to, you know, shake his hand and say, hey, Chief, you know, I appreciate your message, and one day I would like to be where you are. And he said, oh, great, then come and see me. And then I said, okay, great. So, you know, obviously, where I was a little nervous, so I called their secretary, and they did all the special protocol that needed to happen for me to go and see him. And I went to see him, and opened the door. He shook my hand, and then he said, oh, well, it's great to meet you, asked me a little bit about me, and then he gave me a book, and then 5 minutes later, I was out of there. I was upset, kind of upset, you know. At first, I was not into reading, and then he gives me a book, and he tells me, the book is called, and I still remember, As a Man Thinketh, that was the name of the book. And so I said, okay, well, so what I'm going to do, so what I want you to do is I want you to read this book, and then we can come back and talk. And so I did that, and I read the book, made the appointment, and we talked for about 45 minutes, and it's been about 13 years. Till this day, every Christmas, he sends me a care package with 3 books that I'm supposed to read. And that's my story about mentorship, and I've learned a lot about him, and he's been always checking on me.
I had a experience that was similar, but a little different. I was working in an organization and really admired and had a great deal of respect for the leader of the organization. And At the time I was a GS-13, really had not thought about what I wanted to do with my career. I had no aspirations. I hadn't even thought about being an SES. I didn't even know really at that time what an SES was. He was an SES, and as I got to know him a little bit, I thought, you know, I'm doing some pretty cool things and I'd like to share those with him. And so I looked for opportunities to, as I would see him in the hallway or at different events, to kind of say, here's some really interesting things that I'm doing that you might be interested in learning more about. And he was. And so he did a similar thing. He invited me to come up and talk about the things that I was doing that I had mentioned. And from that, we developed a relationship over a period of time that became very close. And he would do similar things. He would give me books to read and he would challenge me. But I think the real legacy from that relationship and that mentoring experience for me was we would do what he called dreaming together. And really that just consisted of sitting down and just talking about anything that was on his mind or on my mind. And sometimes he would ask me what I thought about things, and then I could share my perspective and he would comment on that, and that would lead to a discussion. But it always impressed upon me the importance of two things. One was preserving in our busy schedules, our busy days, time to think and time to do that dreaming and to share that with other people that you work with. But the other thing was, he didn't seek me out. I actually sought him out. And I think that's a good lesson for people that are interested in being mentored. Look for somebody you admire or somebody that you have respect for, and look for opportunities to have a relationship with them. Don't wait for them to come to you.
What advice would you give to junior officers, young airmen, NCOs, or individuals who are entering government service? And what should they look for in a mentor? And what should they expect from a mentor-mentee relationship?
I think the first one that I would say is be humble. And I think that's very important, because as we want to progress in our lives, there is no way that we can learn anything if we are full of knowledge, for example. If we believe that we are full of knowledge, then of course there's no way that you can learn. If we are humble, and humbling does not mean meekness, it just means that you understand what your gifts are, and you recognize also what your weaknesses are. And now I have the opportunity to empty myself of pride so I can learn a little bit from you. And if I can just be humble, then I can learn. So I think that is one of those things that is very important in learning and in progressing.
Yeah, I think that's great advice. I will take the part of also a little bit what the chief said about what I tell young airmen, officers, or NCOs, or civilians, really anybody who's young. So it doesn't just apply to the military. You got to think about what you want to do. I mean, people come in the Air Force for a lot of different reasons. It can be school, it can be money, though that's not a real good reason. It could be you just feel proud about your country and you want to serve. It could be family expectation. So that gets you there oftentimes. Then what do you want to do? I mean, anybody that's wearing a uniform right now, they could get out after one enlistment. I say, thank you for your service. I mean, I would like them to say, but thank you for your service. What they do next is up to them. You got to really think about that. You got to talk to your people you care about. People care about you, and decide on what you want to do in life. You know, what are you all about? And then I can help you. Once you decide what you want to do, well, then I can help you get there. But you got to do some of the hard work yourself. And that's hard work, by the way. And when you're young, you think different things than when you're older.
I would just add to that and say that sometimes, and I know for me this was true, a mentor can help you in that process. You have to do the work, but a mentor can help guide you through that. One of the beautiful things about mentoring really is that it's unique. Every mentor has a different style, a different approach, a different philosophy. Every mentee has different needs and different things that they can share. And so when you pair those multiplicity of different mentors and mentees together, you get a different combination. So every mentee ought to look for a variety of different perspectives and different things in mentors, and mentors, as they mentee others, share across a broad spectrum of different people their perspective. So it sort of like cross-pollinating. So I would just say that that's really, really important. You don't want to just have one person and you just sign up to what that person believes and put blinders on to the rest of the world and the rest of the universe and the rest of thinking, because there's so much more out there. Kind of getting back to what Chief Lugo was saying, open your mind. There's so much to learn and so much to do. And I would just add that every mentee is a mentor as well. Even if you are just an airman or a second lieutenant or a GS-7, you have opportunities to set an example and to talk with your peers and with others. And surprise, surprise, you might find that as you have a relationship with a senior mentor, you're doing some mentoring for them and you don't know it.
You know, Mr. Edwards' point about the different styles of mentoring and the different mentors. Well, I think when we talk about mentorship, sometimes we see something on a person and we have the tendency to try to go for a person that maybe looks like us or looks like somewhere else, and we then miss an opportunity to learn something different and to see different perspectives. So I think that is also something to watch on that mentorship. You might learn something that is completely different. And you may not agree, but then when you sit down and you start thinking about a different perspective, you have an open mind. You can do many different things.
Yeah, so that's interesting too. That's individual. I mean, I've been, my father was my first mentor and probably the most significant in my career, but I've had other ones, and I got different things from each one of them. And I think I expected different things from each one of them. And like Mr. Edwards pointed out, they expected some things from me which I didn't totally count on. I thought it was all, receive mode. So there became more of a relationship with your father. It's a lot of one-way transmission of information. My dad had a pretty strong personality, but with other people it was more two-way. And they would often, like the chief pointed out, they would often ask me questions about my opinion and pull me out of my comfort zone a little bit to see how I thought about things and to make me think about things. And that starts to define the relationship. And I think you learn something different from each one of those, people or situations. And I certainly did. Now, I also caution people, don't feel like you got to have 10 mentors. You can get too many. I mean, a couple, 3 over time is a good start, and then it'll sort of find its natural course. You can have too much advice, and then you don't focus on anything. So that's kind of how I see it. It's individual, and you got to define it with the people that you work and live with.
Now on that point, sir, I also believe that accountability is very important. So if that mentor, checks on you and say, hey, we agreed that we were going to do all of those things. Where are you? Did you do it? And then that person can, just be ready for that. I think you have to be ready for that.
Mm-hmm. How do you feel this iMentor program will really give you the opportunity to get different mentors to acquire more knowledge?
Well, I think it's a great structure. The thing about human beings is we like to have structure in our lives and in our relationships, and so it's really a tool to help us facilitate allowing the members of the organization to have those opportunities to mentor and be mentored. And it really dovetails perfectly and is just a tool in the implementation of the Secretary's My Vector mentoring program. And so I really like the fact that we've got an overarching Air Force perspective, and we have leadership at the very highest levels of the Air Force that recognizes the importance of mentoring and has given us some tools to do that. And I think it's not just our charge, but our responsibility at the unit level, at the headquarters level, to look for ways to further that and to magnify it and to make it more readily available to all of the members of the organization. And so I think that's exactly what we're trying to do, and I think the results will show themselves.
Yeah, I think the important point is just what Mr. Edwards outlined. Mentoring happens all the time, and we want it to happen all the time. Most of the time, we're probably unaware of, but we want to put some structure to it, so we know it's happening at least some of the time. And I think what's great about this structure they've put together, and I didn't put it together, Mr. Edwards didn't put it together, Chiefs didn't put it together, Airmen put it together. What's great about the structure, it presents people options for mentoring that cover a pretty wide range, and these are people who signed up and said we would like to be a part of developing airmen. And so there's a going-in investment. We say we're ready to invest the time and the energy to be a part of this. So it adds that structure to it and allows us to schedule our lives and other people, but it gives a variety of options for the airmen who want to be involved in mentoring. Many airmen have never had a mentor and they don't know how to go about anything we just talked about. It's just a word they hear. And this sets up the opportunity to learn about it and get involved in it. And then maybe they only mentor through this for a little while and they go to a new base and they do their own thing in some other environment. That's great. That just spreads the knowledge, But we'll provide some structure and get everybody going and help take care of them while they're here.
I think that it does. One of the things that I think happens in a unit, those units that are very cohesive are those units that know each other. And I believe what happens in here when we have mentors and we create that type of culture where I understand, my gifts, you understand your gifts, and then not only that, I'm aware of those things. I'm able to come to you when I need help, and then so it creates that collaboration, and not only that, and now it creates a sense of discovery, because we all know that we know each other. Something happens in the organization. Because we have that type of relationship, we get to the point where we can say, hey, have you talked with, Airman so-and-so? Have you talked with, that person can really help you doing this. So now we have a sense of culture airmen who take care of airmen. And it's not about, where you are in the organization, as you mentioned about mentorship not being part of, doesn't have to be about your rank and so on, but it's about having the ability to help somebody and make somebody great.
I'd like to just add to what the chief said, and that is, left to our own devices, we have a tendency to kind of stick with the people that are more like us. So the civilians will kind of group together, the officers will kind of group together, the enlisted members will kind of group together. I think this tool will help us cross-pollinate between those different groups because there are enlisted members that can mentor officers, there are civilians that can mentor enlisted members, and vice versa. It's both ways between all three groups. And I think as we do more of that, we become more diverse and stronger and better, and the mentoring will be effective.
Yeah, I mentioned my first mentor and most influential in my career is my father, certainly my life. But one of the most influential in my career, second to my father, was a Master Sergeant named Wayne D. Cheshire. I talk about him all the time. He's my first flight sergeant. And I was that brand new second lieutenant eager to take over the world. And he set me down and taught me a lot about how the military works, about how life works. He'd been around, and I learned a lot from him. I quote him all the time because some of those lessons I learned young shaped the way I approached this whole, what would eventually become a career. And so they can come from all angles. I think everybody's pointed that out a little bit. I was a lieutenant, he was a Master Sergeant. You can be a general talking to an airman, and the mentoring goes, both ways. So I think it's really good.
That's where the humbleness come into play. You gotta empty yourself, because there's somebody in there that can help me.
Thank you for sharing your personal experiences with us today. General Spacy, would you like to close with any final thoughts?
Sure. Mentoring's important. It's important. That's what we're saying. And we're going to do our part to help make sure people have an opportunity. Mentoring isn't just career advice. It's life. It's everything that goes along with life. All the pillars in the comprehensive airman fitness category. Mentoring's a wide lane, and we want to help airmen fill that up. Answer questions, share experiences, show them that we are their wingmen. We believe in this. This is for real. So I look forward to it. We look forward to seeing you all.
This concludes our first video in the iMentor series. Please stay tuned for future videos and podcasts. And remember, if you would like additional information regarding this program, please check the iMentor tab located on the AFI MSc SharePoint page.